They told me I'd never make it to 100 in my own home. The doctors, the social workers, even my own children. They stood in my living room 7 years ago and said the same thing. You need help, Mother. You need to be somewhere safe. My name is Dorothy Mae Richardson. I'm 100 years old, and I spent most of my life believing that accepting help was the same thing as giving up, until the day I realized that belief was going to kill me. I need to tell you about the moment everything changed, because it wasn't what you'd expect. It wasn't a fall. It wasn't a medical emergency. It wasn't some dramatic turning point. It was a Tuesday afternoon in April, and I was sitting at my kitchen table trying to open a jar of pickles. Such a stupid, small thing. I'd been working at that lid for 20 minutes, my hands aching, my fingers slipping on the glass, and I finally gave up and put it back in the refrigerator. And then I sat back down at that table, and I cried for the first time in 15 years. Not because of the pickles, because of what the pickles meant. Because I suddenly saw myself clearly, maybe for the first time in decades, and what I saw terrified me. I was 93 years old, living alone in a 4-bedroom house, and I was losing a battle against a jar of pickles. My husband Robert had been gone for 12 years. My children all lived within 30 minutes of me, but I only saw them on Sundays because I'd spent years convincing them I was fine. I was managing. I didn't need anything. And the truth was, I'd been lying to them and to myself for so long that I'd started to believe it. Let me go back, because you need to understand who I was before you can understand what I had to become. I grew up during the Depression in a farmhouse outside of Tulsa, the oldest of 6 children. My father worked himself to exhaustion every single day, and my mother never once asked for help from anyone, not even when things got so bad we were eating potato soup for dinner 4 nights a week. She used to say that the Hendersons take care of their own, and I absorbed that lesson like gospel. Self-reliance wasn't just a value in our house, it was survival. I carried that with me when I married Robert in 1946. I was 20 years old and thought I knew everything about how life worked. He was a good man, steady, kind, and we built a life together that I'm proud of. 3 children. This house we bought in 1952 for $8,000. A garden that grew tomatoes so sweet you could eat them like apples. Robert travelled for work, gone sometimes 2 or 3 weeks at a time, and I managed everything while he was away. The children, the house, the bills, the broken water heater at 2 in the morning, the car that wouldn't start, the school problems, the neighbour disputes, every single thing that makes up a life. I was good at it. I was capable, organised, and I took pride in that capability. When Robert's mother got sick and needed care, I handled it. When my own mother had her stroke, I drove to Tulsa every weekend for 2 years to make sure she was comfortable. When our daughter Linda was going through her divorce and fell apart, I took care of her children for 6 months while she put herself back together. I was the strong one. I was the one people leaned on. And somewhere in all of that, I started to believe that needing help meant I'd failed at the only thing I'd ever really been good at. Robert died on a Thursday morning in February, went to bed with a headache and never woke up. Massive stroke. He was 81. I was 88. And suddenly, I was alone in a way I'd never been before. The children wanted me to move in immediately. Linda had a whole plan worked out, the guest room, the garage apartment. But I said no. I said I needed time. And then I just never brought it up again. I convinced myself I was honouring Robert's memory by staying in our house, by keeping everything exactly as we'd left it. His reading glasses still on the nightstand, his jacket still in the closet, his coffee mug still hanging on the same hook where he'd put it every morning for 40 years. But really, I was terrified of admitting that I couldn't do it alone anymore, that the woman I'd spent my whole life being was disappearing piece by piece. The first year after Robert died, I was fine. I really was. I kept up with the house, managed my finances, drove myself to the grocery store, to church, to book club. The second year got harder, but I adapted. I stopped driving at night. I hired a lawn service. I bought pre-cut vegetables, small concessions that I told myself didn't mean anything. By the third year, I was lying to everyone, including myself. I cancelled doctor appointments. I ate toast instead of dinner. I stopped going to church. My world was shrinking, and I pretended not to notice. The pickle jar moment happened in year 5 of being alone, year 5 of insisting I was fine, year 5 of slowly disappearing into this house like a ghost, and sitting at that kitchen table, crying over pickles, I finally admitted the truth. I was not fine. I was not managing. I was drowning in my own stubbornness, and if I didn't change something, I was going to die alone in this house. That night I called Linda, and I told her the truth. Not the polite version, not the edited version, the real truth. She was at my house in 15 minutes. She didn't say I told you so. She just held my hand and said, "We'll figure it out together." And that word, together, broke something open in me. We started small, which was the only way I could handle it. Linda took me to the doctor and sat with me while I admitted I'd stopped taking half my medications because I couldn't keep track of which ones were which. The doctor set me up with a pill organizer and a visiting nurse who came once a week to check on me. I hated it at first, having a stranger come into my home, ask personal questions, look through my medications. But the nurse, her name was Patricia, she never made me feel like I was failing. She just helped me set up systems that made sense. Next was the bathroom. My son James came over one Saturday with his tools and installed grab bars by the toilet and in the shower. He replaced my old tub with a walk-in shower that had a seat. I cried when I saw it, because it felt like admitting defeat, like I was turning my home into a hospital. But the first time I took a shower without being terrified I was going to slip and fall, I understood. This wasn't about defeat. This was about staying alive. Michael, my youngest, He took over my finances. I'd been so proud of managing my own money for 93 years, but the truth was I'd missed payments, paid some bills twice, nearly had my electricity shut off because I'd forgotten entirely. Michael set everything up online. He showed me how to check things, but he took over the actual management, and the relief I felt was enormous. I hadn't realized how much anxiety I'd been carrying until I didn't have to carry it anymore. Then Linda found Teresa. Teresa was 62, a widow herself, originally from Guatemala. She needed work. Linda suggested she come 4 days a week to help around the house, and I resisted at first. I imagined someone stern, someone who would boss me around, treat me like a child. But Teresa wasn't like that. She was warm, funny. She treated my home with respect, never moved things without asking, never threw anything away without checking first. She started by deep cleaning, something I'd been avoiding for months because it felt overwhelming. We worked on it together, room by room, and as we cleaned, she told me stories about her husband who died 3 years before mine, about her children and grandchildren, about coming to America when she was 19 and barely speaking English. And I realized something. We weren't so different, she and me. We'd both spent our lives taking care of other people, and we'd both struggled with accepting care ourselves. Teresa taught me that help doesn't have to mean helplessness. She'd ask what I wanted for dinner, and we'd cook together. She did the things that were hard for me. I did what I could. She never took over. She collaborated. And slowly, my kitchen stopped being a place of frustration and became a place of joy again. We made things I never would have tried on my own. Guatemalan pepián that took all afternoon and tasted like nothing I'd ever had before. Her grandmother's recipe for sweet plantains. A chocolate cake from scratch for my great-grandson's birthday. But the biggest change wasn't any of these practical things. It was something deeper, something I didn't even realize was happening until one day I looked around and saw it clearly. My children started visiting more, not because they had to, but because they wanted to. My home stopped feeling like a place of worry and started feeling like a place of warmth. My grandchildren brought their friends over. My great-grandchildren did homework at my kitchen table while Teresa and I made dinner. I started hosting Sunday dinners again, something I'd given up after Robert died because it felt like too much work. But with Teresa's help and my children pitching in, it wasn't work at all. It was what it was supposed to be. Family gathered around food and conversation. 3 generations in one room. Laughter, arguments, children playing. This house that had been so quiet for so long was alive again. And somewhere in all of that, I realized the truth. Independence isn't isolation. Strength isn't refusing help, and asking for help isn't weakness. When I turned 100 last month, we had a party that started at 2 in the afternoon and didn't end until almost midnight. 73 people came through this house. My children, my grandchildren, my great-grandchildren, Teresa and her family, neighbours I'd known for 50 years, friends from church, Patricia, my nurse, who had become a friend. Someone made a banner that said Dorothy's Century and hung it across the living room. At one point I just stood there, looking at all those people, and thought about how close I'd come to missing this. If I'd held on to my pride, if I'd kept insisting I was fine when I wasn't, if I'd refused the help everyone kept offering, I wouldn't have made it to 100. I'd be in a nursing home, if I was lucky. Or more likely, I'd have fallen one day when no one was around, and that would have been the end. All because I was too stubborn to admit I needed help. My great-granddaughter Sophia, she's 8 years old, and she asked me during the party what it feels like to be 100. I thought about it for a moment, because I wanted to give her a real answer. Not something sweet, not something meaningless. I told her being 100 feels like being 20 and 40 and 60 all at the same time. That I still feel young inside, even though my body doesn't work the way it used to. That I've learned more in the last 7 years than I learned in the previous 93. That the hardest lesson I ever learned was that needing people doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. She looked at me with those serious eyes children sometimes have, and she said, "Great-grandma, were you scared?" And I told her yes. I told her I was terrified, scared of being a burden, scared of losing myself, scared of what it would mean if I couldn't do everything on my own anymore. But I learned something. That fear was lying to me, because letting people help me didn't make me lose myself. It helped me find myself again. If you're watching this, and you're struggling the way I struggled, if you're holding on to your independence so tightly that you're pushing away everyone who loves you, I need you to hear this. Your children don't want to put you away. They want to help you stay where you are. Your friends aren't waiting for you to fail. They're waiting for permission to be there. And that voice in your head telling you that asking for help means you failed, that voice is wrong. It's lying to you, the same way it lied to me for 93 years. The difference between me, sitting in my own home at 100, surrounded by family, and me being in a nursing home somewhere, isn't strength, or money, or health. It's that I finally learned how to say 3 words. I need help. Those 3 words saved my life. They gave me back my family. They turned my last years from something I was just enduring into something I'm actually living. I look around this house now, the house I've lived in for 74 years, and I see Robert's chair. I see the grab bars in the bathroom. I see the kitchen where Teresa and I will make soup tomorrow. I see the table where my family gathers every Sunday. And I understand now everything that makes this house a home exists because I was finally brave enough to stop being strong all by myself. You don't have to do it alone. You were never meant to do it alone. And accepting help isn't the beginning of the end. It's the beginning of everything that comes after, if you're brave enough to let it be.